Let not that man think that he shall receive anything of the Lord. For let not that man think that he shall receive anything of the Lord. A double-minded man is unstable in all his ways. All right, Pastor Lee.
Heavenly Father, we pray that you would minister, Lord God, in our hearts and souls here tonight. Lord, we pray that you would strengthen, Lord Jesus, uplift, Lord God, and instruct. We thank you, Lord, for all your blessings. We give you praise in Jesus' name.
Amen. I'm going to talk about trials here today. The Lord had laid this on my heart probably about a month or so, 6 weeks, something like that. I got back. And, you know, I really believe that as we see the day of the Lord coming, and the coming of the Lord is getting close to us, I believe that we're going to see the church going through a lot of trials and tribulations.
Yes.
And I think that, and I just told somebody this recently, and this is something I had gleaned from when I had done this study, but I think trials can be sent to us by the enemy to discourage us and to defeat us. Or we can have trials sent our way by that God allows to grow us into the things of God. I'm going to tell you a story I had read not too long ago. There was this young man, and his name was Glenn Chambers. And this young man, he was a fine young man, and he really loved the Lord, and he had a desire to do something for the Lord. So he decided that he was going to be a missionary. So he was somebody who was just passionate about the things of God, so he decided he was going to put his money, so to speak, where his mouth is. So he went, and he went through Bible college. He learned more about the Word of God. He went through mission school, which you have to go through before you become a missionary. And he went through the whole process, just excited about going onto the mission field. So when he was getting ready to leave for the mission field, and he's at the airport waiting, and he decides, it's time to get on the plane. He's sitting there waiting for the plane to come, and he realized that he really hadn't done a proper goodbye with his family, with his parents. So there was a magazine sitting there. He didn't have any paper, so he tore a piece off of an area where there wasn't a lot of advertisement. He wrote a little note to his parents. And in that note, and he said that, he's all excited and that, about his opportunity and everything. And somehow, I'm not even quite sure how, he was able to mail that letter before he got on the plane. So he wrote this letter, and they got on the plane, and before the plane landed, the plane crashed. And he perished in the plane crash. And his parents, and this is a true story, his parents got this a few days after they found out that he had passed away, got this note saying, and he was just pouring out how passionate and how glad he was for their love and support and all the passion, that he really felt for what God called him to do. And on the back end of the magazine, on the other side of the magazine, there was this big word just listed across, and it said, why? You heard that before? Yeah. And I want to tell you something, and that was the question. You see a man who wants to do something for God and the things of God and passionate about the things of God, and his life's cut short. How many of you ever had things happen that you just don't understand why God hasn't protected them, or why God hasn't stepped in, or why God is allowing this to come upon them, or come upon you, or come upon, the whole, just the situation itself to come. And, I remember when my mom was going through cancer, and I know, Teresa, you can relate to this too. I prayed and I prayed and I prayed for her healing. In the beginning, we're all excited. God's going to do so. I know God's going to heal. My mom was a woman of great faith. She really had a lot of faith in the Lord. And she had a lot of family. A lot of her family really had a lot of faith in God. And we just knew God was going to heal her. But as time went on, she got weaker and weaker and weaker. We had to come to face the facts that maybe this wasn't God's plan. And maybe God wasn't going to heal her. And those why questions, it's just, we don't always understand. C.S. Lewis, and we all know who C.S. Lewis was, Chronicles of Narnia, a great theologian, I guess you'd call him. And he said something way back, and it's very, very true today. He says that one of the hardest things for Christians to or for people who are non-Christians or even Christians to understand, and that when people look at it, it's the problem of pain and the problem of suffering among Christians.
Yeah.
Because we think that God's just going to just deliver us or just step in the nick of time or always do what we requested or asked of Him. And it doesn't always work that way.
True.
It doesn't
Come on.
always work that way. So the question is asked, why do Christians, why do bad things happen to good people? Why do things happen? I have a friend that we grew up she's quite a bit older than me. She grew up more with my husband in the same church, and she got married to a minister and had 2 boys, and her boys grew up in the church and loved the things of God. And her oldest son became a minister. He got his minister's license, and he was passionate helping them out in the church. He got married, just got married. He was diagnosed with lymphoma. I have to think of the name. Lymphoma. They prayed and prayed and prayed and prayed and prayed for him. He died.
Yeah.
Why? A young man that has so much potential. But these are, sometimes we don't always understand
Sorry.
why God allows these things, but I do know one thing. One of the things that God popped into my head the time when my mom was sick was, it's one thing to know what God can do. I have faith, knowing what God's capable of doing. And faith, sometimes it's hard, sometimes it's easy. But I have faith. I know my God's a healer. I know what God's able to do. But sometimes faith, when the situation comes down to things like this, it's not faith that's going to carry you through. It's trust. Trusting, not only faith what God's going to do, but trusting what God is going to do. Not what faith is basically trusting what God can do, let me say it that way. Faith or trust is just being okay with what God's going to do. And sometimes it comes down to trust and trusting in the things of God. Now we read in James here, and this portion that I read, of course, it's written to the 12 tribes, which is the Jewish people. And it's so funny because here in the beginning, and this is something that, I heard someone say this and I thought it's so true. He says, "My brethren, count it all joy when you fall into divers temptations." How many of you are so joyful when you go through a trial? How many of you are so happy, like, oh yes, another trial, yippee, yippee skippy, this is like wonderful. Are we happy when we go through trials? Do we have a big smile on our face? All right, do we feel just great about this? Trials are trials. They're difficult, they're hard. So what is he saying in here? Was James just flippantly writing a verse that maybe we didn't have to worry about or pay attention to? Was it his perspective? Was he tired when he wrote this? Was he on painkillers? I don't know. It almost looks like he was, but he says, count it all joy when you fall into divers temptations. In other words, when you go through trials, we're supposed to count it joy.
Come on.
Joy, all right? Now, first of all, let's look at the difference here. How many of you realize that happiness and joy are 2 separate things?
Yes. Yeah.
Happiness is based on our circumstances.
That's right.
All right, there's things that make me happy. My grandkids make me happy. Sometimes their parents make me happy. So, there's things that make me happy. I like going to Reyes Teca. That makes me happy. I like when my husband does nice things for me. That makes me happy. So, there's things that make me happy. I like getting together with friends and fellowshipping. I love fellowshipping with my friends and with my sisters in the Lord. And, that makes me happy. But happiness is dependent on circumstances and things all around us.
Yes.
Okay? And the difference between happiness and joy is this, that joy is only something, now think about this, and I thought about this, and I thought about this, and I thought about this. Joy can only come from God. Joy is something deep inside of you.
Yes.
Only God can give you joy.
Right, come on.
Do you realize
Yes.
that? It can only come from the Lord.
Right.
I don't have it in myself to have joy.
Come on.
But with my relationship with the Lord and what God, God being in my life, He gives me joy. And my joy is not based on circumstances. The furnace might be broke down, my car might be broke down, my children might be at each other, my husband might be sick. Sometimes you go through all these things in life and then you still have this something inside of you that doesn't make it seem hopeless.
Right.
Come on.
That is the joy of the Holy Ghost. That is the joy
Amen.
of the Lord. He is the only thing. God is the only thing that can give us
Jesus.
joy.
That's right.
Because it's supernatural. It's
Praise-
out of ourselves
praise
to do that. It is not in us as people. I can't give you joy. And you can't give me joy. You make me happy, but you don't give me joy.
That's right.
Only the Lord can give me joy. So, when we look at this, count it all joy. When you go through trials and you go through things, we're supposed to count it joy. And the rest of the world looks around and they think, okay, to count it joy when you go through things, that is just plain dumb. That's what the world thinks. That just don't even make sense. But one thing I have found in my service of the Lord, what the rest of this world thinks makes sense, it doesn't always make sense when it comes to the things of God.
That's right.
All right? What God sometimes wants from us, what God does, what God asks of us, the things that, it's not going to make sense to the world.
That's right.
It's not supposed to make sense to the world. But we Christians can get this.
That's right.
We can get this. Now, it says here, to count it all. Now, the word count, means in the Greek, there's another derogatory connotation of that word, and it means to consider. Consider it joy. All right? Now, you look at this and you think, okay, I'm supposed to consider this joy when I go through these things. Now, if I want to find some joy and I want to find some purpose in what I'm going through, sometimes I think we need to evaluate our situations, our circumstances, and find out, Lord, why are you allowing me to go through this? Now, if God didn't want you to go through this, God would remove it.
That's right.
But sometimes God allows this stuff for a reason. Look at Job. The prime example. We all know the story of Job. The prime example in the Bible. When you look at Job, it's like in the beginning, it's the Lord and Satan having a conversation, Lucifer having a conversation. And the Lord says, hey, look at my servant Job, how faithful he is. And you know what the Lord did? He allowed the enemy to work on Job.
That's right.
He allowed it. And when you first start reading the book of Job, and Job's losing, Lord Almighty, how much can a person lose? He lost his children, he lost his riches, he lost cattle, he lost so much. His body was afflicted.
Right.
All like back to back to back to back. He just went through all of this. That even his wife is saying, I can't stand it no more. Just curse God and die. I can't stand it. We all want to give Mrs. Job a bad rap. But how many of you like to see your loved ones go through the things that Job was going through?
That's right.
And she got to the point where she couldn't even stand it anymore. And it looked at first like Job was getting, that he was just kind of getting depressed and down and self-pity. And at first it looks like Job is going to do all this. And all of a sudden, his faith in God, his trust in God
Come on.
just rebounds. And Job comes out the winner.
That's right.
He stayed under it. He trusted God. He gave glory to God. And he came out stronger
That's right.
and better than ever. Job did. God gave Job so much more. He blessed Job because of the trial that he went through. So when we look at this word consider, when your trials and your temptations and these things come your way, stop and pray and ask the Lord this. God, why am I going through this? Why have you allowed this? Show me the things that you're trying to teach me. One of the things that I was, when we were doing this study and I was looking at and different things I was reading and things like that, it talks here about how there's one thing that we need to realize. we're living in this world, right? Anybody not living in the world?
Yeah.
We're living in this world. Do you realize that trials and the things that come on us is our opportunity to let the Lord shine through us in these hard times, in these adversities? Now, I think about that, and I think about, how people handle trials and situations. I've seen people when things come their way, and some people have gone through terrible, terrible things. Loss of children, loss of family members, terrible financial crisis and stuff like that. I've seen people go through very, very difficult things.
Wow.
But the thing that separates the men from the boys, the real from the fake, is how we handle these situations. Now the world, I will tell you what the world does. The ones that don't know the Lord don't have the peace of God and the joy of having the Lord inside of them. They cuss over it. They complain about it. They don't show the world the peace of God, the joy of the Lord. And when I say joy, that doesn't mean we're all walking around like, ha, 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 ha. Even though we used to sing that song, the joy, ha, 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 ha. That's not really the joy of the Lord. I always wondered about that. That's the happiness that God gives us at the moment, but God even gives us a lot more than that. He gives us the joy. That's not even what the subject's talking about. It's not talking about walking around with this great big smile on your face, like, your child just died, and people are like, how are you? I'm great. I mean, do you know people like that? I know people that every time you ask them how they're doing, they're like, oh, I'm fantastic. I couldn't be better. There's this one guy, and he's actually a preacher, and it's funny, but I asked him, I said, brother, I said, how are you doing? And he looked at me, and he goes, terrible. And I looked at him and I said, you look terrible. And he's like, he starts laughing. He goes, I was going to say terribly good. And he goes, I was going to say terribly good. And he goes, you didn't give me a chance to. Because I'm like, well, you look terrible. And it was just kind of funny the way it played out. You had to be there. But anyways, but the thing is, it's like, okay, he's one of these guys that's always like, Brother Porter, he's always like, I'm fantastic. And sometimes I have to think, are you always fantastic? It's like, okay. It's like, all right, it's okay to go through things and to need help and to reach out and to feel overwhelmed or consumed, by situations in life. It's okay to feel that.
That's right.
But it's how we respond to it that makes all the difference in the world. It makes all the difference in the world. Now, one thing that I have realized, and this is the crux of what I'm trying to get across here today when I did this study. I really believe that trials and things we go through, and even James says, sometimes they're for our perfecting. They're to teach us, they're to show us what God is and what He can be to us. But I also believe it's our chance to show the world, what it's like to go through these trials with God in here versus going through these trials without God.
Amen.
And I think it's up to us to show the world there is a difference.
Yes.
There is a difference in doing that. If I'm going through some financial crisis, I'd rather go day to day knowing that God has promised to take care of me. Consider the lilies of the field. They don't toil, they don't spin, and their Heavenly Father has clothed them, and they're so beautiful, and how much more does He love us? And is going to do that for us. So maybe it's day to day in my finances, and I don't always know where it's going to come from. I'd much rather go through that with God than to go through that without Him.
Right.
Maybe if I lost someone dear to me, I don't know, I want to tell you something right now, and it's okay. As long as nobody knows me. But anyways, I have a sister that went through my mother's death too. From the time my mother has passed away, she's gone through nothing but anxiety, saying, why? why, can find no meaning, no purpose, no nothing in any of this. I'm thankful that I have God because He has shown me the meaning, the purpose. I trust that God loved my mother more than I love my mother.
Yeah.
And that God knew what was best for her
Yes.
and acted on her behalf.
Yes.
I trust that. And I have peace about it. All right? I'm so glad that when my mom, the closest person on this earth who passed from me, I was so glad that when she passed away, I had God. I had the Lord. And this is our chance to share. Maybe it's going through a problems with relatives, or maybe it's going through legal problems, or I don't even know what everybody's situations are and their problems are. The world, they turn to drugs, they turn to alcohol, they turn to abusive relationships, they turn to things that they're trying to find these things that are going to give them meaning and ease that pain inside of them from what they're going through.
Yeah.
But Christians, people who know the Lord and love the Lord, count it all joy.
Yeah.
There is a purpose in it. Find the purpose
That's right.
that is going to give you that peace, knowing that God is still working. Count it all joy. Joy comes from the Lord. Count it as something God is giving us and doing in us when we go through those things. And maybe it'll help you through it. And I know they're hard. I know situations are hard. I know trials are hard. But going through it with God versus going through it without God, there is never. Give me the Lord every time.
Amen.
Give me the Lord. You know,
Amen.
like I said, sometimes I don't know why God allows the things He does. But I know one thing, that He loves me.
Right. Yes.
And I know one thing, that if He's allowing it, it's for my good.
Yes.
And whatever I need to learn from it, whatever I need to grow, what area I need to grow in, whatever situation that maybe it's not even about me. Maybe it's about someone watching my reaction and my walk with God. Maybe it's about someone else needing to come to the Lord, or watching a situation, or God's moving somehow somewhere else through the situation with myself or with you. We don't know.
Yeah.
But count it all joy.
Yes.
Count it all joy. You know, the Bible talks about fruits. And I think that sometimes the fruit thing is the most underrated thing in Christianity. I don't think people realize the importance of the fruit.
Yeah.
All right, I actually went out and I bought a whole pack. I wish I would have brought them, but I bought a whole pack at the Christian bookstore of fruit bookmarks about the fruit of the Spirit. Because I give them to people, because I want people to understand. You know, when you're a Christian, if you say you're a Christian, there's fruits that are associated with the Christian walk.
That's right.
They're called the fruit of the Spirit.
That's right.
All right? And when you are filled with the Spirit of God, those fruit are what's supposed to be manifested in your life.
That's right.
I can't walk around saying I'm an apple tree when I'm producing lemons.
Come on.
All right? I can't walk around and saying I'm a coconut tree when I'm producing peanuts.
That's right.
I guess peanuts grow on trees, right? I don't know. But whatever it is, the fruit of the Spirit is telling the world who we are. All right? And I look at the fruit of the Spirit, and I look at what God is trying to do in me, you know, for myself and for the world. And I know one thing: I will not quit.
Come on.
I will not quit. I've seen people, when trouble comes their way and shakes their world, they walk away from God.
Yeah.
They walk away from God. I've seen people in their marriages, when their marriages don't do good, okay, they walk away from God. I've seen people in the time of loss, financial problems, they walk away from God.
Yeah.
But when you are a true believer who knows and you have the joy of the Lord, the part of you of all this, that to count it all joy, and we've learned how to do that, you will survive through that trial and through that crisis. Just like Job did, just like Joseph did, just like David did. I can go on and I can go on and I can go on. Ruth.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems like every major person in the Bible who God was able to use had to go through something
Yes.
before God could get them to that place where he could use them.
That's right.
Count it all joy, folks, when you're going through all these different problems, all these trials, all these things, because it's working in you. It's working something in you. God's working in you. He is doing something in you. He is doing something in you.
Yes, amen.
That's right.
One thing that I think, I did touch a little bit on it, and I'm not going to be too much longer, but I kind of skipped here and there with my notes. But one thing, like I said, is be careful how we react to our problems and our situations. All right? There is see if I can find it here. There's a Greek word. It says, in the one verse, it says, "For you know that the testing of your faith produces," what's that word? Patience. Who prays for patience? I try. I refuse to pray for patience. I'm like, Lord, just help my impatience. But I don't want patience. Okay. But I really do want patience. But it says the trying of our faith produces patience. Now, I love the Greek and Hebrew, and I love those kind of things. It's the Greek word for that word patience, and I'm going to butcher this, is a word that is, I'll spell it. It's Hupomone. Hupomone? Okay, whatever it is. The technical definition of that word in the Greek, that hupomone for patience, it means to remain under. Now, when you're going through something, and it's a very difficult situation, and it's not easy to be in, what is your first reaction? To get out from under it, right? Okay, we want to do everything in our power to get out from under this situation, all right, or whatever we feel that we have to do, all right, and because we feel the pressure from it, and we feel like, this is just not easy to go through, and things like that. But what this word means, hupomone, all right, it says to remain under. And what I take from that is this, that sometimes when we're going through things, it is, it's not like if God gives us a way out of it, we're not going to take it. It's not anything like that. But we're not going to bail out on God. We're not going to walk away. We're not going to bail out, throw in the towel to make things easier or to lighten our load. We're going to remain under this in order for the Lord to teach us what He is out there to teach us or to do in us or to produce the results that God is trying to bring about in our lives.
Yes.
And another thing is when you're going through all this, be careful of your spirit. We can remain under this, all right? But we can complain about the whole time. Well, I don't know what God's trying to teach me, but I wish He'd get it over with already. Or maybe we're going to kick the dog or the cat, or we're going to yell and scream at our spouses, or we're going to, it's just that we got to be careful about how we're reacting when we're going through all these things, because we want to realize that, or we want to get through this because we want the Lord to be able to do what He wants to do. 1 Peter 5:6 says, "Humble yourselves therefore under the mighty hand of God, that He may exalt you in due time." Joseph, Job, even Ruth, David. And then there's the ones that didn't. I look at Saul. When things start getting a little rough for Saul took matters in his own hands. He did not follow after what God wanted for him, and he did not follow the instructions that God gave him. He took matters in his own hands, started doing it his way.
Yes.
But Peter says that if we humble ourselves under the mighty hand of God, if we say, "Okay, Lord, whatever you have for me, just help me to be wise enough to see it, help me to get through it," that God will exalt you
In due time.
in due time.
Yes.
That gives me a lot of hope.
Amen.
When you're hammering on a nail, you want that nail to go into a certain place. And the only way that nail is going to get where it's supposed to go is with the hammer, right? I'm sure that poor nail won't feel so good when the hammer's hitting it. But that's the only way it's going to get to the goal. The diamond that doesn't remain under the chisel will never be precious. It will never be as a beautiful diamond unless it's chiseled and perfected and cut away and things done to it. And we all know that gold needs to be put through the fire in order for it to become pure. Not a pleasant process. So for us to remain under the hand of God, while God has brought trials and things into our lives, may not be the easiest thing, but if you remain under the hand of God, He will exalt you in due time when He's ready. I've seen people who have walked away. I've seen people walk away from their marriages. I've seen people walk away from God. I've seen a lot of people walk away from things when things got rough. But that's not what God has in mind for us all. And I have a lot of notes here I can talk about here, but basically my point that I wanted to get through to anyone who may need it is count it all joy when you're going through a hard time. Consider, think about it. Think about what God is trying to show you, what God's trying to do in me. What is the product of this, the purpose of this? It doesn't mean you're bad. It doesn't mean that you're a sinner. I mean, we're all sinners saved by grace, but it doesn't mean that you're a terrible person when God puts you through trials.
That's right.
Was Joseph? No. Was Job? No, not at all. So when you're going through those things, just remember, God had a plan and purpose. Joseph's one of my favorite Bible characters because I look at Joseph, the life of Joseph, and it happened from the time he was 17 years old, from what I understand, till he was about 40, is when he became the second in command under Pharaoh. Is that correct? About 40? So for, what, let me do math, 23 years? He went through this process where he came from being the beloved, favorite son of a wealthy man, sold by his jealous brothers into slavery. Keeps a good attitude, okay, works his way up, and gets a position of responsibility where he was content. And what happens? Things are brought against him. Unfair. Not fair. Did Joseph deserve that? No. But it was brought against him, and what happened? He was knocked down even further. He lost his freedom. At least when he worked for Potiphar, sure, he was a servant, but he had his freedom. He was high up at Potiphar's house. He was able to come and go. He could see the light of day.
Yeah.
They say that, I read somewhere that those prisons in that time, that he was put into a prison, you didn't even see the light. You hardly ever saw the light of day when you were in those prisons. And he surely couldn't come and go.
Yeah.
But even down in there, he was given a position of responsibility because of his good attitude.
Yeah.
He kept his attitude, he kept his spirit right, because something was working in Joseph. You know, I know he didn't know this scripture because Joseph's story happened way before this was written. But maybe in the back of Joseph's head was, I'm going to count it joy because God's given me a dream. God's given me a promise.
Yes.
And right now, all I can see is these are not good circumstances, but I'm trusting you, God.
Amen.
It's not just my faith anymore, God. It's my trust, knowing that whatever you decide to do with me, Lord, I'm going to trust you through all of this.
That's right.
And then what happens? He goes and he interprets dreams that came true. You would have thought that would have gotten a lot of attention. But what did they do? They forgot him again.
Yes.
For I don't know how long. And then finally, Joseph's day came.
That's right.
Where he went from the lowest of lows, where he didn't even see the light of day, to the second most powerful man in the whole kingdom. Count it all joy
Jesus,
when you're going
praise
through these
Jesus,
things.
praise you,
Because
Jesus.
God is doing a work. Trust Him. Put yourself under it. Say, Lord, if there's anything I need to do, anything I need to see, show it to me, Lord. Reveal it to me, Lord. If you're doing it for other purposes, Lord, use me. I trust you, God, because I know you love me. Count it all joy. Let's stand. Hallelujah. I don't know if this talked to you, but I will tell you